You know, that's one of the things in your bios that we can say, directors, producers, and just overall good humans. So we're happy that you're here. They don't need to know about me because y'all see me on the other forums. So this is about y'all. Yeah, I'd love to um, go ahead and toss it to you, Shariffa, and let us know. Let us know.
Well, thank you so much. And you know what an honor to be here and to get to share time and spend time with the Fosters. You know, something that was particularly moving for me was hearing how through your residency, artists do not have to pay to make the work that they do or to participate in the residency. And for me, that's very profound because I feel like for my entire artistic career thus far, there's always been something that I've needed to pay in order to be this creative leader. It's always come at a cost, and more often than not, that cost is financial. But as someone who grew up in South Africa in the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, witnessing a country that was coming out of the apartheid era, you know, the cost of being among the first wave of integrated students in school was that you weren't always seen in the totality of who you were, or that the syllabus still had very strong strains of white supremacy. And so in making art, the cost of what it meant to do that meant sometimes being met by parents of well-meaning friends who would come and touch my skin after performances and say, "Oh my gosh, you mean you are black? I thought you were, you were painted because your British accent or your American accent was so strong." The cost of coming to a foreign country in 2013 and having to self-produce after thinking that the US was the land of abundance where there was just resource beyond, beyond one's wildest dreams, and to learn that theater in the US also struggles immensely. Nonprofit theater struggles to put on such amazing and incredible works. The cost that this pandemic has brought to so many of us, uh, many of us feel that while we know what we do is essential, how can we make sense of the time that we've had? So, and of course, the financial costs, the barriers to entry for so many of us. So to hear that the residency comes at no cost is the most unimaginable invitation, and so thank you for doing that, and thank you for having us here in order to support that as much as we could.
Shariffa Ali, everyone. Director, creative producer, motivational speaker, life coach.
Yes. And
Muse.
so many things we'll get back to. For
and
sure.
Now you'll learn about Adrian's bio.
Hi, Adrian.
Hi, it won't be as epic as Shariffa's intro. Thank you for that, Shariffa. And I think it goes back to, just to tack a little bit along that, is what you all are doing, and something that's so important to us is the impact that we make, right? In whatever way that we can do that, in the most. So there's some alignment in terms of values. So thank you so much for reaching out to us and for us to have this conversation. I'm Adrian Alea, creative producer and director. I'm a co-founder of Alea Productions, which is a production company co-founded as well by Shariffa, which we founded this summer. So we're theater makers, also working our way into the film industry, and also into digital content. In terms of my experience, I'm currently the creative associate at New York City Center for Encores, and I'm a creative producer for their digital series Inside the Revival. And then I did some associate directing, for example, for Public Works with Hercules and Disney Theatricals, and also was a management associate for Jennifer Lopez and Benny Medina. So worked a little bit in the commercial LA industry as well.
Wait, can you just all see? I said they do it all, right? They do it all.
And we're also great neighbors to Ahmad.
Yes. I would say I can throw a rock on you, but I'd rather say I can throw a biscuit at you and it would hit you.
And we can catch it.
We'll catch.
get that bit. Ow. Well, you know what? I would love, Adrian. For everyone, let's start at the beginning. Like, I really want to know from both of you, what it is that got you to being neighbors here in New York City, meeting each other. Like, let's start at the beginning. Like, was art a part of your life young? Let's go way back. What would you say, Adrian? Where did it start for you? How did we get here?
Yeah, so for me, I caught the theater bug, like many of us, through an actor's lens. So I was in lower school. We were always required to be part of the theater show or the play. You know, I remember I was a Firefly one year. I was I was part of the Beatles in this like little skit we were doing, and that then transformed later into my high school career of actually creating these huge productions with my class for homecoming week. So every year we had a theme. We would get the band together in our class. We would do a sketch performance, and it was this huge celebration of spirit for our class. So then I realized
high school where, Adrian? Where was high school?
Yeah, Fort Myers, Florida, good Southwest Florida. And then that's when I realized, oh, this is a little bit more into the directing and producing aspect of bringing people together, to create one big goal and one big story. So after that, went to Columbia University, and then that's when I came here to New York City, BA in theater with a concentration in directing. And then Shariffa, that's when I met you, 2015, post-graduation with Public Works.
That's right. I caught the bug early, like Adrian, and when it came time to go to university, had gotten into a law program, had gotten into a journalism program, and had gotten into the theater program, and it just never made sense to me to study theater, and so for that exact reason I did, and did so in a time where South Africa was trying to imagine what is our theater identity now. Growing up, I learned a lot about how theater, particularly South African protest theater, was really instrumental in helping frame the narrative for communities and sort of the international community, so to speak, on the atrocities of the apartheid era. But now, post-apartheid, what were the stories that we were trying to tell? What were the explorations? So I got my start actually doing performance art work, where highly conceptually driven performance art pieces that would often be installed as part of like maybe a gallery exhibition or an opening. And so that was my first foray into art making. I remember installing one piece that had this giant bounce house, is what you call them in the US. We call them jumping castles, that were shaped like like a giant castle with sort of 4 columns or pillars. And in the piece, it was a movement piece that I'd installed in the city hall. We would switch off the bounce house and witness how it would deflate and kind of come to nothing gradually over minutes of time and lots of choreography. And that was meant to sort of symbolize the sort of crumble or melting of morality. And it was a comment on how corruption at the government level was really the decay that lay at the heart of South African socio-political life. So that was like my entry point into the world, and it was through a wonderful relationship with an incredible writer, Josh Wilder, that I was invited to the US in 2013, only for a 2-week stay. It was originally intended to be a 2-week visit, literally, a suitcase and a project in mind. And it was that first encounter with the US theater at the August Wilson Center in Pittsburgh that I felt my first heartbreak in the American theater, where they were losing their funding. And I remember it, the disheartening feeling of having talked to technical teams one day about what lights and what sound we'd hoped to see in our little show that we were putting together at the August Wilson Center, to come back and learn that those people had been let go. So for me, hearing the word furlough is actually kind of not PTSD, but it takes me back to that first spring in 2013. And I honestly have to say, guys, that my ego wouldn't let me return to South Africa without having done something. I mean, I was 20 years old. I had nothing, nothing pressing to return home to. And so I, ultimately did what is now known as producing at the time, by using everything that I had and the two people that I knew to self-produce a portion of the project that we had started working on in Pittsburgh. Put it up at the Alchemical Theater on, oh my gosh, I'm like one of those old New York theater people now. Put it up at the Alchemical on 14th. It was run by, what's his name those days? I guess that's who I've become in the last 7 years. But it has felt like, those chance, fate, destined moments, these, by chance meetings, sitting next to an Alvin Ailey dancer, at a group dinner, that caused me to meet this person who would then become my collaborator. Adrian, our meeting in 2015, when I had been interning and now working at the Public Theater, at the Public Works program, that allowed us to build a friendship where we were just cheering each other on. We were both hustling, by day, you working with the Medina Company and Lear de Vessenet, myself working at Public Works. By day, we were doing those administrative jobs, and by night, we'd be making our own stuff and our own content, and we'd be sort of sharing the journey with each other. Adrian went to get his master's, I remember, and he came back into the city. And at this point in time, were you moving more to directing, or so you had gotten your start as an actor and you undergrad, but you were moving more towards producing and directing at this point in time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Directing, and then I went to grad school at Northwestern University, master's for leadership in creative enterprises, and then that took me more into creative producing specifically, and then that's where we really started
cheering each other on. Yeah. And so it was a good 5 years of, I would say, courtship to what has now become one of the happiest business marriages and art marriages of my life thus far. And it was through a process of first, interning, adminning, hustling, in the evenings, making our own work, until we, what sort of picked it up? Well, that's the beginning of the story. And I should add, I was interested in directing initially.
I mean, it just means that I can't believe it was supposed to be 2 weeks. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You were just meant to stay. And what's so funny is, like, I was in Pittsburgh, I went to school in Pittsburgh, and I left Pittsburgh in 2010. And a lot of my friends who graduated with me were dancing at the August Wilson. And I remember Pittsburgh was so aglow about what was happening down the street from my school at the August Wilson Theater. And just like you, the next thing I knew, it was crumbling. So I was like, what's happening? It's such a beautiful space. And well, that's so interesting. You talk about, I know you both have that time at the Public. And I wonder, even before that, Columbia, Northwestern, these universities that you went to, and the Public, like what do you feel came out of those programs, those theaters, that sort of teed you up for what you're doing now? Like what was there, and then what wasn't there? Because it sounds like you were always kind of doing your own grind, like since the beginning, you were doing your own thing, but you were getting that. Was it just mentorship? Were you just trying to see how the thing ran so that you were ready to do your own thing? Was it infiltration? Like what did they offer you, those programs and those theaters that you're using now to move it forward?
I would say the University of Cape Town gave me a physical practice, like a body practice, that our work is embodied, whether you're directing, whether you're producing, or whether you're on stage. That this work is so important to centralize the human body in the work of storytelling, that I've always had sensibilities around what John Doyle calls essentialism with my own work, because of what we learned there, because from that the sort of sense of actually scarcity of resources, that we couldn't always have elaborate, scenic design or costume design, but we could do really rigorous physical work. And so from the University of Cape Town, I would say a practice that's based on, cerebral and conceptual thinking, yes, but really rigorous physical storytelling. I'll toss over to you, Adrian, and while I think of what did I get from the public theater?
Yeah, what about you, Adrian?
Yeah, at least for Columbia University, what I loved about it, it was a holistic approach in a liberal arts program. So even though I went going in knowing that I wanted to be a theater major, I also had to take a science class. So I had to take chemistry. I had to take French. I had to take my economics course. So I'm able to pull from these different courses and different philosophies and theories and bring that into the art making, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to just only, studying theater and that's it, and the technical aspects of it. But here at Columbia, it was a nice mashup between the technical and the theoretical, which I think is so, so important. And on top of that, totally academically rigorous school. So I had to balance so many different things. So that's something in terms of, it allowed me to really learn about my work ethic and my values and what I want to do, what I want to do in this world, right? And at least with the public theater, then for us, Shariffa, it's like community engagement. That was at least my first introduction with the public theater was community-based work. And that was something that I explored at Columbia through my thesis. I directed a 45-minute one act where I brought in different clubs and organizations from Columbia University who were basically never done theater before. And then I found out, oh wow, there's a program at the public theater called Public Works that does something similar with their cameo groups. So then that was my segue out of university into community-based work.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't know how to type an email when I landed my internship at the public. So professional development, like in a really serious way. And I mean that in the sense that, like, yes, I have a minor in English literature, but like, we're not trained in our conservatories to do our taxes, or to how to sort of, maybe there's a class that's like, auditioning or how to run an audition, but we're not always given what we need to enter into the workplace as theater artists who have to be able to do many things. And so, yeah, I learned correspondence, how to respond in a timely way with some of the most high stakes folks at the public theater, the most high stakes donor base and performer, I guess, cohort, because I worked in Oscar Eustace's office. I also learned how to decipher his handwriting in order to respond to some of those emails. And it was like, for me, a time, just a year of kind of living in the central processing unit, the CPU, the brain of the public theater, learning how, executive level leadership works with artistic leadership in the American theater. So I was also learning a lot about how infrastructures, as you had said, Ahmad, about infiltration, but more to do with how these theaters can work when they are running at the level that the public theater is at. And I learned how to make photocopies, but I also learned how to, give a 30-second elevator pitch to whichever big fancy person I was taking up from the lobby into the office. So I built a lot of I would say some of my core friendships in the US were built in the sort of grad school that the 5 years at the public became for me. After Oscar's office, I moved into public works. I met incredible people, including Adrian, including David, including so many of our friends who are now head honchos at many other theaters. So that class of the intern groups, or the entry level folk that I met at the public are now sort of, on the rise and on the up and up, if we are to really think optimistically about our situation. and
Yeah.
we'll soon be sort of running our field very soon.
Yeah, that I love. I mean, we can segue into this because that brings me right into a lot of things I've been telling the kids that I mentor in high school or colleges. They're like, well, so, who do I need to connect with when I get to New York? And like, who are the, choreographers and directors you have there? I'm like, well, honestly, look around. Like, who's in your class? Like, stop asking me who up here I need to connect you with to audition with. Like, look around at the people that you're graduating with, because those really are, it's you. We're all waiting for you, to come and be those people for yourselves. And that's just, it's a different way of thinking that I think I feel this past year has shifted us more into, especially those who will have graduated this past May or maybe this past December. It's like teaching them that you are the one that you have to rely on now. There's, there's no waiting
Totally.
The
in that way.
is not
Do you
something.
think that? Go ahead, Shariffa. I'm sorry. No.
The industry is not some figment of the imagination that is like way over there. No, the industry is this room. The industry is your peer. The industry is the person you're working with today, as you said, Ahmad.
Yeah, and that there's no rules in this industry. Like truly, there's no rules. You know what I mean? So if you want to be, XYZ, there are so many different paths to be an arts leader and a creative worker. It's not like medical school where you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G to become a doctor. We don't have that, which is a blessing and a curse, right? That there's so many options. So I think Shariffa and I, something we really take pride on is we always say yes. An opportunity comes in, we say yes, and we see where that takes us.
I think that what you said, like, there is the illusion of rules, though. I think a lot of people do think there are rules, and the rules actually become inhibitory instead of a way forward. Ahmad, though, I love what you were saying about, like, these are the people in the room. Do you think that do you think that's a bigger mind shift because of the pandemic? Do you think that we will see a shift in that? And I think that's a question for everybody.
I honestly think it's more that generation of artists that's very close to my generation. Just they've been doing it, but not giving themselves the credit. Like, they've always been here and making things, right? But now that there's no other way to do it, they're finally having to realize, oh wait, this is the art making that I wanted to do. Like, I can't fit this into the goal, the dream, the path that I thought, was the path to that one thing. And so it's more about just telling them you're already doing it, so you don't have to look so far away from yourself. That's more how I'm thinking. So maybe it isn't necessarily a product of the pandemic. It's just that the pandemic has forced them to do more of it, maybe, and recognize it more, or give it value, maybe.
I think I've seen a shift in experiencing just locally what I have experienced is that I feel much of the theater industry in general was people waiting for someone to give them permission to do something. And there's no more permission because there is that. So I actually think that's one good thing to come out of the pandemic is your success, or not even success, your art is not dependent upon anybody else but yourself. And I hope that comes through, through the pandemic. A good thing to come out of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that, while you're on your way towards like total autonomy and like stepping into your like full, like, I don't need permission self, find the people who affirm and it's so valuable to find the people who do validate you and affirm you and lift up your brilliance, whether it is on a peer level, whether it is on a sort of mentor mentee, multi-directional. And I think that I would say, Adrian, we've been very fortunate in throughout our journey as directors, as now producers, that we have had those. There's been no shortage of that. And in terms of
Who
like
were those,
coming,
Shariffa?
pardon?
Who were those for both of you? I'd love to know, you know, you maybe you both separately, but also together. I know like Adrian with your work with Lear, you know, Shariffa with your work now at OSF. Like, who are those institutions that are mentoring you? Those people, you know, can we talk more specifically about them?
Absolutely, and Ahmad's gonna get us in trouble with whoever we don't mention, because this will be available on Facebook, I believe. Um, and I think that it, you know, again, in a multitudinous way, I would say that Lear de Bessonet and Laurie Woolery, and Emily Knapp at the Public have played big parts in both Adrian and I, and you know, our journey. Jane Cox, who runs the theater program at Princeton, uh, and and of course John Doyle, who is our beloved artistic director of Classic Stage Theater, who gave me my very first opportunity, unprompted, to direct on off Broadway. And you know, not only did he do that, but he allowed me to come into the space exactly who I was. He wanted me to direct Miss Julie. And I said, look, I'm really only interested in doing Miss Julie if it could be this adaptation, Miss Julie, the South African version that spoke about post-apartheid South Africa. And not only did he say yes, but John has been one of those artists who, in some ways, by the way that he moves through the world, he moves in a way that gives people permission to shine, or permission to do not the taboo thing, but the thing that you wouldn't expect a Tony award-winning director to do or say. And so I try and stay as close to him as possible because of that permission. The new group, you know, the artistic director Scott Elliott and Ian Morgan, they were Team Shariffa in the hustle days of, like, you know, work by day, make art by night. They were my employers and found beautiful ways to navigate our problematic immigration system in order to keep me fed, literally. And so those are people that you don't forget. And then, of course, more recently, Adrian and I have an artistic home in the form of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival,
Yeah.
um, run by Nataki Garrett, David Schmitz, and of course, Everin Ochkin. And yeah, I mean, the
And it's the digital series, you guys. I mean, we got it. We have to talk. I know, Jason, I'm looking at the clock just because I can go, but I
Because
really
we're
want y'all
here.
to talk. I really want y'all to talk about Ashland and the work that you're doing with OSF and the digital series. And I mean, do you mind going there now, since you're
absolutely.
talking about your residency? Yeah,
Do it.
let's go there. Let's go there.
You know, I'll let Adrian talk about it, but one thing I'll say to tie it together quite nicely is that in some ways this pause, this kind of ceasing of theater as we know it, in the way that we knew it, has allowed me, at least slowly, to pull the disparate parts of my intersecting identities together in order to become a more whole rounded person. So my interest in directing, my interest in anti-racism work, my interest and work in virtual reality, and of course now my interest in film, I get to now bring all those identities along with me wherever I go. Whereas in the past, it was a feeling of, oh, let me just bring in the 10% that I need to bring in here and leave, 90% of me out the door. I now feel
Mm.
that I'm getting more and more at peace with bringing all of me into the space. And so Ashland was a huge part of that journey. And Ashland is the film that we just shot and released for OSF.
Yes, and to start that story, it was really the pandemic that brought me and Shariffa together to even work with each other on this capacity. We never thought about starting our own company together, working on a specific project together. That was not part of it was not part of our world at that moment, and it was the pandemic where Shariffa extended this beautiful invitation in June. she's like, Adrian, come to Oregon, stay here for 10 days, take a fresh breath air. My mom is an ER doctor in the Bronx, so she was hit pretty hard as a frontline worker during the pandemic here. So Shariffa extended this invitation. I said yes. And during that time, Shariffa was in conversations and solidifying her artist in residency at Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And part of that conversation was talking about different projects with her. And one of them was a short film. And Shariffa extended this invitation like, hey, stay for a little bit longer. She saw how beautiful the nature, just it was so cathartic.
You were changing. Your spirit. I remember taking you to a socially distanced barbecue, and I remember you being so blown away by this small, queer, predominantly brown community that I found in Oregon, in this pocket of paradise in the midst of the pandemic. So you hadn't had that much social interaction. You were blown away.
No, not at all. And it was like just the community in Ashland and Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and the artists there and the administrative staff. It was a dream, and I've never felt more a part of a true community than I have in Oregon, Ashland, and OSF. Like period.
Not by design, but
not by design. So then that 10-day trip turned into 2 months of producing our short film presented by Oregon Shakespeare Festival, where half of the workers were theater makers and half of the other collaborators were at the top of the film industry in Ashland, which is one of the top 10 filming destinations per movie maker. So yeah, that started. We had a beautiful collaboration with OSF, and we're really blessed that they brought us on board as a co-production for producing our next short film with them that we're in the process of writing and pre-production for, and we'll be shooting that in April with Oregon Shakespeare Festival. So again, this was something that was not planned. It kind of just happened. We had such a beautiful experience there that we created our own production company, and now a lot of things are cooking and brewing, development deals, other stories, and we want to tell, and it's just the beginning of this new foot into the film industry and this theater film hybrid that we're trying to figure out.
To everyone joining on webinars, I just put the link in the chat, so make sure to check it out. It's incredible. It's really it's beautiful on so many levels. One thing that I was so drawn to both of you at Foster's, one of our statements is we believe that audiences and artists benefit from a broad range of perspectives and backgrounds. And I know that's a lot of both of your work, of what you do. Can you talk a little bit about why that's so important to you? Why that's so important to bring humanitarianism, awareness to the art that you create?
I think that we are made richer and fuller by our capacity and our ability to connect with people, stories from a multitude of sort of areas and focal points. And so for us, for me at least, it's about wanting, again, this battle, this journey of wanting to be seen in the totality of who I am. And in order to even begin to want that for oneself, you have to be able to see other people as multi-dimensional entities. And so, Ashland is one sort of example of how someone's internal compass, or what happens when our internal compasses are off, and what is the process of refinding and reconnecting to oneself like. And so I think for this reason we are aligned with the Fosters.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think something kind of segue, but talking about that whole journey is one thing that is so important to me and Shariffa is having this asset-based approach to storytelling, where that story didn't come, literally we were on the balcony one evening, we looked down from our balcony and we see that trailer. That opened up the story for us. So what are the things that the world is already providing for us? And how can we honor that gift that is given to us and create the story? We had a beautiful relationship. Shariffa had a great friendship and relationship with a colleague of ours, Camila Long. She's the managing director at Play on Shakespeare, and she was generous enough to share her story as she was going through her vitiligo journey. So that was then put into the story. So it's this asset-based approach of embracing theater values, within the film process. Shariffa was out there rehearsing with Camila Long and Cindy Johnson for 3 weeks before the shoot, which is a privilege, half theater workers, half filmmakers, and we were embracing the community building skills that are so much a part of our identity into the film process, which is usually quick. Starting off the day in a full circle, doing introductions, giving a land acknowledgement, that was eye-opening to the film professionals of Ashland, right? And we built this beautiful cross-cultural and cross-genre community there that we hope we can take to other cities and embrace their local artists, as well as giving the gift of community.
You said something so beautiful. Y'all are talking about acknowledging what is already there for us. Like you looking down and seeing what's there, and that's sparking your creative, mind, or talking to someone that you've known for a long time, but then really recognizing, oh, your story, my story, they meet. Oh, here's something here. It's like, that is such a beautiful thing. I'm drawn to the scene at the pond, where the actor is putting on.
Don't give too much away.
Oh, I can't. Thank you. But there's something so special that happens there. I'll just say with breath, that was really life-changing for me. That sort of reset, reconfigure. I mean, because so many of us in that moment, I just realized, like, so many of us are hiding, like in the most open spaces in our lives and in the world. We're still just hiding, and we're still self-loathing instead of self-loving. And there's something in that moment, without giving it away, that I love. So how do we talk about that without giving that away?
I think I can say that was heavily informed by our theater background, right? Breath is so much a part of our work. I mean, it should be a part of everything, it is, but conscious breath. And in some ways, Ahmad, you have found the kind of Easter egg of the piece is the breath pattern work. I think that any secret, I think it's about dropping into breath and moving away from cerebral understanding and being on an experiential journey. And then if you allow yourself to take that experiential journey, lock into the breath, you may find an answer, in the piece. And I think that is indicative of the kinds of work, the kinds of story, the kinds of existence that we want to have in the world. Is the artists where process is just as important as product, where people are just as important as product, where pleasure is just as important as the product. And I think that the pandemic has allowed us to really rewire, like, what's important to us again? What type of world are we trying to create? What world do we not want to live in 10, 15, 100 years time? So that kind of rewiring, this cursed blessing, has really helped, again, allow us to step into, I think, a more refined purpose with this work.
Yeah, and where we have the power to create really the structure in which we thrive most in. Like that, for us, especially for me, was eye-opening, where I do not have to create work in this way that we've been taught, right? Especially in the white American theater. We can dismantle that, because we can create our own rules. And that's kind of when I get back to that first statement, Jason, that I said. It's like, you know what, this industry doesn't have rules, because it doesn't, right? That we have now the power to create in any way that we can, in whatever system or structure we best thrive in an equitable way.
This makes a great transition to one of our questions from one of our participants tonight. I hope I'm saying this right. And Zion asks, what are the benefits and setbacks of doing theater virtually during a pandemic?
Wouldn't know. Haven't done a lot of theater in the pandemic. I've completely kind of had to transition to, filmmaking and virtual reality work. I am not fueled by a practice of Zoom theater as of yet, and I know that many people are, and I'm okay with that. So for me, it's been about actually finding a different way to tell story. Storytelling is different now.
Mr. Espinal, I miss you. Thank you for this question. Great playwright. Check him out. I had the pleasure of directing him at, I believe it was MCC. Beautiful, beautiful play that he wrote. So thank you for your question. And I think one of the benefits is we now have the idea of accessibility is so it's much easier in terms of sharing your work virtually now. Shariffa, specifically with this short film, it's like you're able to share short film and also with Copper Children, right? When you directed Karen Zacharias' Copper Children, it was filmed, and you were able to share that work with your family, that have never been able to see your work. So in some ways, there's this benefit of digitization supporting greater accessibility to the work, and that's a blessing. And I really hope theaters continue to embrace digitization and digital storytelling and content to continue sharing stories to as many people as possible.
Well, it seems like, I mean, going along with the theme of this conversation and the main reason why I thought it was so important to talk to the two of you is because that is next. You are doing what is next, and you're both, I say you're blazing trails, because when you're doing your work, you were talking about systems, like not having to create work for certain systems. You're coming with your way of doing it. Every piece you do, you bring your way, and I believe that's next. What do you say about that? The VR, what you're doing with your radio plays. I find a lot of what's been happening in the past 8-9 months is everyone was scrambling. The higher powers, the big institutions are scrambling, like, okay, well, we have to hire more Black and brown actors and playwrights and directors. Okay, where are they? Okay, well, let's just bring them in. Let's get them here. Let's slot them in here. And as much as we say, okay, we want to see that representation, we don't necessarily want to be slotted in to what you've already been doing. So both of you, I see as you bring all of that with you. You don't just put yourself in a place. Like, what have you felt that at all in the past year? This hurriedness to diversify a space, and that's why you're there. Like, how has that have felt for you?
I think that for me, back to business as usual and won't do. In that, our current systems that are now on hold and that will maybe come back with a little browner, so to speak, with a bit more representation, haven't really served us from the beginning. And I am not interested in seeing a day where we just replace our system with another sort of capitalist driven system that just mirrors maybe our current system. I don't think that we would have done our work. I think that the work is actually about a complete reimagining, or complete sort of like, reconfiguring, so that we are looking at new models of how power is shared. We're looking at new models of how access and accessibility, what the barriers are to the theater. And I know that as long as we live, as long as our governments, as long as we live in a society that keeps telling us we're not essential, the arts are not essential, we'll never get to see that, So I do think that, Ahmad, a healthy thing to do in one's lifetime is to just try and model it. Afrofuturism is the work that involves imagining a future for the Black body away from its outside of its state of of repression. And when I think about futurism, I think that it has to be imagined, it has to be practiced, it has to be tried out as a crazy idea before we can even imagine it to be a possibility. And so maybe what we're doing, Adrian, is we're modeling this kind of maybe outlier or weird hybrid strategy that just looks really really like us and what we're most comfortable with and excited and enthused about, maybe it is spurring something else. I've never thought of it that way. We
Yeah.
never think of legacy. We more think about impact, but not legacy.
Yeah, impact and legacy, totally. And then it's finding that community and those people and those individuals who say yes to your crazy ideas. Oregon Shakespeare Festival, Nataki, Evren, those are people who said yes,
Yes.
let's do it, let's play. Great. And then it's honestly especially with OSF, it's been such a blessing to have their support in this discovery of our own process and this new structures that we're creating with Adrian Alea Productions. So find your community. They're all out there. It takes time, but once you find them, you hold on to them so tight, so tight. And I'm blessed to, Ahmad, you're part of that community for us. Shariffa, David, Jason, new member, congratulations.
Hannah Sharif, who I'm a big fan of, who has also modeled that kind of trailblazing, Liesl Tommy trailblazing,
Yes.
just carved out, a path.
Totally.
I'd say the work that both of you are doing, and Ahmad included in this too, is so inspiring to see. And I really believe that is how we make change. You make change by doing change, right? Like that's the truth. And so we're rounding out our time here tonight. I can't thank both of you, and Ahmad, thank you, for your time and your generosity. It means a lot to our Foster's family. So thank you for sharing with us tonight. We really, really appreciate it. Oh, and so really quickly, if you enjoyed tonight, please consider making a tax deductible donation to Foster's. Again, there's two easy ways to do that: by going to our website at www.fostersresidency.org, or on Venmo. It's at Foster's Residency. Super, super easy, super quick. And like I said, $2 goes a really long way at Foster's. And lastly, Shariffa and Adrian and Ahmad, where can we see you? What are ways that, where can we see your work? What are ways that people can I put in the OSF link in our chat, but what are other ways people can see your work?
Chocolate Tart on Instagram. Chocolate_tart.
Yes.
I'm
for me,
at Ahmad Simmons. That's easy.
Yes.
At Ahmad Simmons. Instagram at @A_ALEA, and then I post some content on my website, adrianalea.com.
Amazing.
It needs a little bit of tweaking, but go ahead, tell me if you like it.
Oh, I liked it. I was on it. I was on both of yours. I think they're both great. I liked it a lot.
Don't you think it needs some color?
No, I actually thought that its simplicity was really great.
Mine is still in the works.
Thank you for everybody that joined tonight. We really appreciate coming back to Foster's Forums. Thank you for everybody on Facebook Live tonight. And make sure to check back on our website for our next Foster's Forums. They're always the last Monday of every single month. So Shariffa, Adrian, Ahmad, thank you. Have a beautiful night, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.